I can get this. Thank you so much. So, good evening, everyone. I am so excited to bring you guys the first of our design entrepreneurship fireside chats. My name is Dawn Mays, and I am the Director of Design Entrepreneurship and Inclusion at Kent State University's Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative. I know that was a mouthful. This is a new initiative that began, I actually started last February, February 1st, 2023. 23? No, yes, 23. Time has flown. And my primary role was to help to bring more minorities into the profession. And a part of this role also deals with the outcomes of being able to build the next pipeline of minority architecture firm owners. And so, over the course of the time that I have been here, I have conducted tons of interviews and research and reading to be able to glean as much information as possible to be able to bring to you all the work that I've been doing and my findings. And so this series is intended to inform all of those that are interested in starting their own architecture firms and the various successful business models that you can consider when you are thinking about starting your business. And so I am so excited this evening to bring to you Calvin Singleton. So I want to read a little bit about Calvin before we get started with the chat. Calvin M. Singleton Jr. is president and CEO of Calvin Singleton and Associates, a full-service professional architecture and planning firm located at 13426 Cedar Road in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. It's been owned and operated as a sole proprietorship. CSA was established in 1984 and has been located in Cleveland Heights since its inception and has extensive experience in both new and renovation work, locally, regionally, and nationally. Mr. Singleton was born in Lima, Ohio, and graduated from Shaker Hts High School in 1974. He studied architecture at Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, Illinois, graduating with a Bachelor of Architecture cum laude degree in 1979. Mr. Singleton has been a resident of Cleveland Heights, Ohio for over 37 years, where he raised a son, Calvin III, and daughter Jade, who is a fifth grade teacher in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mr. Singleton has multiple member affiliations, including Cleveland Public Arts, where he's a committee member, the Building Code Officials Conference of Northeast Ohio, in which he's a member, and Future Heights, in which he is a board member and co-chair of the Civic Engagement Committee. So I am just so elated that you have been able to join us, Mr. Singleton. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So before we actually get started, I did want to do some housekeeping rules here. So if you've never been on Zoom before, at the bottom of your screen, there's actually a chat option. In the chat, if there's any questions that come up that you would like to ask, please drop it in the chat. We do have a chat monitor here that will be able to bring your question up. We will be talking for about 45 minutes and leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end to be able to answer those questions. Okay, so I have so many questions, and I don't know how many of these questions we'll be able to get to, Calvin. However, we're going to try our best.
Sounds good.
Yes. Okay. So let me see here. So first off, when did you decide that you wanted to own your own architecture firm? Like, was there a moment in your life? Was there a job you took where you said, no, I want to do this myself? Did you always know that? So before we, set the stage of the actual pathway, when did you decide that you wanted to be one?
Well, I when my parents moved to Shaker, we lived in Lima. We went to Shaker, and 2 years in, so I guess I was about 14 years old. I'm a workaholic, okay? So I wanted to, I like money. So I wanted to get a job. but I decided architecture seemed like a fun area. So my parents identified two firms in the city. One was Madison, one was Whitley. And she said, give them a call. So I called with the Whitley brothers. This is James and I'm forgetting William, the two Whitley twins. And I gave them a call, and they said, "Well, just come on through and take a tour of the office, and we'll see what we can do." So I toured the office, and that's when I said, "You know what? This is pretty nice. This is pretty nice." So I started out cleaning their plants and cleaning off desks and stuff, and then by chance I started building models for them. So right away I knew this is what I wanted to do. It seemed so appropriate to be able to control your own destiny.
Awesome. Okay. So how long were you at Whitley and Whitley before you left it? Wait, how old were you?
I was 14.
14. Okay.
So,
So how old were you when you actually started your firm?
well, when I started my firm, it actually started when I first got registered, which was 1982. And I was in a practice, I was in a Kent Design Group, which is an interior design group, contract furniture dealership, but we wanted to have architectural services. Um, However, we could not pull the architecture together right away because of rules and regulations for the state and the percentage of people who have to be registered architects to uh, say that you practice architecture. So I said, well, I'm licensed. I'm going to start practicing. So I started practicing in 1984 out of my house.
Okay. So can you describe, I know you and I have talked about this when I interviewed you last year, but can you describe what your first year of business was like?
Ooh, that's it's kind of sticky because I was in a partnership for 1 year, and in that partnership, we all said that. Um, well, I'm going to back up a little if you don't mind, and I'll try and talk fast. Um, Coming out of college, I knew in Chicago the architects were very it was tough to see how they could support themselves. And a lot of it was because they had poor business acumen. They just did not know how to run a practice. Now your flagship places, your Skidmore Owings and Merrills and Perkins and Wills and stuff, they were on a whole different level. But as a starting practitioner coming out the gate, it was difficult to see. And by chance, I started reading about John Portman in Atlanta, and that's where I saw the development role and how that made sense that you could create a separate stream of income, independent from your architecture, and it could be steady. So that's when I started taking business classes at school during my sophomore year. And then my fifth year, I got into the MBA program and um, studied finance. So at that point, I knew that I needed to try and do something that would allow me to get into development. But I worked in a partnership for 1 year. We said we would all still practicing if each of us became a millionaire in 1 year. Otherwise, we would split off and go on our own. So that next year, I was off on my own.
Oh, you guys didn't make $1 million in 1 year, huh?
A million each, okay? So, and there were three of us. So it didn't
Wow.
quite work out. But that's what, gave me my jump off point to actually start practicing for myself. So I started practicing. And the first project that I had from the company, we all split up, divvied up projects and said, okay, you can take this, you'll take this. Of course, the one I took was the one that the client decided he wanted to shaft me and not pay. So it ended up in litigation. Fortunately, the engineer on the project with me was also a practicing attorney. So we knew how to attach stuff. And 2 years later, I finally got paid. But, that first year, I was hustling, trying to get any and all type of work that I could find. Plus, I had just purchased a house and I had a new baby on the way. My son was in. So it was just a frantic year, but I pulled through it. And I guess they say sometimes adversity builds character. And so I had quite a bit of adversity. So,
Well, that is a whirlwind. I would say your first year would make me want to like cower and go away somewhere in the corner. But I'm so happy that you were able to really pull through that on the other side. So the reason why I invited you here to this fireside chat is because you have invested in your business and you bought a commercial building where you are practicing. And so now that we know after your first year it was a partnership of three people, you didn't make $1 million each after 1 year, you all kind of disbanded. When what was there a moment where you said, okay, I want to restructure my business or I want to purchase a property, or did it happen as something that was a happenstance, right? You didn't actually plan for it, it just happened. So we want to hear that story of how did you decide to go from three partnerships to now I'm going to own my own building?
well, I was practicing in my basement when I left the partnership, and my son was born. We had a day during the day. We had a basically a nanny for my son, but unfortunately, she felt since I was in the house that she could take breaks whenever she wanted and bring my son downstairs. And I'm like, okay, how's this going to work? So I knew then and there. I said I have to do something different. So that's when I started looking for a building, and that was in 85, 86, somewhere around there.
So what was that, year two or three?
That was year 2 or 3. Yeah.
Okay, so you said
Oh.
I need a business, I mean a building, but you weren't doing it as like an investment or any of that, or it could be lucrative. You were just like, I can't work in my house. I got to get out of here.
Yes, it was threefold. Okay. I did
Okay.
want to invest and I did need a separate place of practice. So um but I saw a little tiny ad in the paper for a building, and it was on Cedar Road. So I responded to the real estate agent who's
Wait,
promoting it.
before you continue that, okay, when you decided that you wanted to find a building, how much time passed before you saw this tiny article about a building?
Oh, not much time. Once I decided, I was actively and aggressively hunting for um, a building and a location. And this building was perfect location for me, right on Cedar, busy artery. And it had, good bones, everything that you would look for in a property. And I, I, I can go back a little because I did dabble in flipping for a minute, houses. And as a matter of fact, that's how I ended up getting into the house I had in Cleveland Heights, because I was working with a realtor at that time, and we would spot and identify. I would investigate the property for good bones and just undervalued, and so we would look at that. So I forgot all about that, you know. But
You've been
yeah,
withholding information, Calvin.
I
Okay, that
know, I
sounds like a
know.
good story about flipping houses.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
to bring you back.
Reel me back. But that got me into development, obviously, and we start playing with stuff. But I also realized too, I hated residential because you're dealing with people who um, some do not really care about your property. Commercial, they at least build it back because they're trying to promote their businesses. But residentially, it's always a maintenance thing. So that's when I did focus on commercial as well. So it was a strategic move to try to get a commercial building. And then at that time, actually when I had left Chicago from school and was going into business classes and looking at finance, that's when I realized you never purchase a property that's 100% owner occupied. um, because now everything relies on you. So the building I got was like 50%. Actually, I could have reduced it down more if I wanted, or increased it to the portion to rent, but it's about 50% rented. Um, uh, the other 50% is my occupancy of the second floor. So, but again, you look at square footage, you look at what you can price it as, and then you can determine, and actually you can really figure out just how much money do you want to make and how much can you make off of the rents. How much is your mortgage? How much net profit can you achieve with that process? So when you work the formulas, that's where I saw this building and the idea of building for me. And it wasn't too big, it's manageable, because the other aspect is that when you do purchase property, unless you have a management team with you who can maintain it and manage it and market it, you wear all those hats. So I knew I didn't want something that was too large and unwieldy that I could not be able to really manage.
Wow. So what I'm hearing you say is that when you graduated with your architecture degree and then you decided to go back to school to get an MBA, you learned about profit and loss and purchasing commercial property. And so this told you in the lessons you've learned was that you never purchase a commercial property where you are the sole occupant,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And so can you just walk us through what it was like purchasing a commercial building? Because it is not like buying a house, right? And so for those that are like, yes, I want to own my own building, I want to run my business out of here and all of that, can you walk us through what that was like and things to consider and how are you feeling? Because I'm thinking if I own a house, they might say my debt to income ratio is too high for me to acquire a whole nother building. You see what I'm saying? So like, can you walk us through that process?
Yeah, you see that question got me sweating. I had to take my coat off. And everything has a storyline behind it. It's just like a marriage, think of all the stuff that goes wrong before you hit the pulpit and stuff. That's what buying a building is like. First of all, financing is key. And second of all, it did not occur to me just how difficult it would be as a person of color. I just did not, I had no clue how bad it would be. I went through about between 25 and 30 different financial institutions to try and find something, find a banker, a financial group, or somebody who would, you know, um, give me the loan. I was very fortunate at that time that there was a agency called the Minority Development Finance Commission with the state of Ohio. And they were offering 40% uh, loan at, I think it was 2.5% interest. So it was pretty good. But 40% from the state, 50% from a financial agency, and then 10% equity on my part. So with that formula, it helped in terms of enticing the banks. So I thought they still didn't want to do it. So I went back to the MDFC, Minority Development Finance Commission, and said, I'm having a heck of a time trying to get financing. They said, well, there's a new bank that's opening up in Cleveland. It's Thomas Long, and we think they might be open to it. So they contacted them. I met with them. They were a startup. I had to show them literally how financially I was making enough and had enough in assets and equity that I really didn't need their loan. I mean, that's what it came down to. They needed to see on the books that I had that much. I was fortunate. I had some good projects, and it was showing pretty good. As a matter of fact, I had my largest project had just come in, so that made my books really look good, even though I hadn't paid out my bills yet. But it looked good on paper, so I was able to get the loan. And so, um, and once I got the loan, um, I let me step back just a second. I presented a model that they did not expect. They being the Minority Development Finance Commission and the bank, which is my model showed where the rental coming in was paying off 100% plus. It was like 120% of the loan amounts. And therefore, um, I had a steady flow of revenue independent of my business. So that was enticing. They hadn't seen that before. Usually they come in and folks are looking for plant and equipment and, money and line of credits and all of that. I wasn't looking. I was showing them, here's my financial, here's my plan, and here's where money's coming in. And they liked it. The other part that I got creative with is, and I don't know if many of you have heard of the idea of purchasing with and getting a loan and they put money in your pocket. Um, that's actually how I ended up doing this project or my building. What I did is I included improvement costs, and the improvement costs were like about 20%. Well, my part of it was 10%. So when I got it financed and the monies came in, the dollar value was actually higher than the actual purchase cost of the building. So when they gave me the 90% loan, it covered the total mortgage amount plus some money in my pocket, actually. So sometimes you just, and this was the advantage of studying business, studying finance. I tell people, young people all the time that um, get into business, but you have to kind of know numbers and like numbers. Not a lot of people like now. I'm a geek that way. So I find it finance. Uh, I find it um, intriguing for me to just break it down and see how can I make this work? How can I come up with something different? And but it all panned out. It took a year to get all of that through, but once I got the funding, everything worked out very well.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, how long did that process take? And that includes going to the 30 or 40 financial institutions over a
Oh,
year or a year total.
yeah, yeah. It really was a little bit more than a year, but uh, no, it was about a year. And the reason why I know this is because the previous owner of the building that I got, he sent out emergency calls to the realtor and said, "You advertised too soon." He was having a building built in Fairfield, Ohio. It wasn't going to be ready for a year later. So he's like, "I need time." I said, "That's great. So do I." So it worked out perfectly. He had the time he needed. He gave me, you know, everything that I needed in terms of paperwork, uh, things to present for the loan and all like that. So it really worked out well. It was meant to be. It was meant to be.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. So I'm hoping nowadays it won't take someone a year to acquire a building, maybe 3 months, 6 months. I'm thinking at the latest if they can't find some kind of financing. But you get this building after a year, and now you have several hats that you are wearing. Not only are you a husband and a dad and a firm owner, you are now a landlord and a
Mhm.
property owner. So you bought this building and it was empty, correct, when you bought it, as far as any tenants?
Correct. Right.
So
It,
what was your what was your strategy when you first got in? And what were some of the major obstacles in running your business through your real estate investment?
I my one goal was really just to maintain my architectural practice. I had to move equipment, I had to set up, I had to do improvements. There were some basic improvements I had to do. I put a lot of, I had a lot of manual labor that I had to put in here because I had to fill out walls. I had to design my space. I had to submit that to the city and get permits to come in and function. So that took, a few more months. So it's not like it was move-in ready. I had to design my space. I had to come up with plans that were presentable for the city, get permits. Then I had to find contractors to come and build the space out. So it was a lot. It was a lot. But simultaneously, I was seeking tenants. And I got two good tenants who, one was an insurance company, the other was a behaviorist and a psychiatrist. They had the backspace, the behaviorists and psychiatrists, they had the backspace, the front space was the insurance company. They were mainstays. I think they each stayed here at least 6, 8 years. Regular on-time payments. So now, when that happened, and now the model was working because I always said I wanted to practice architecture as a hobby. I didn't want it to be the driving force behind making a living. I didn't want to have to live project to project to project. So now, and I always say this, anyone, you're blessed when you can say that your work is play. And my work now became play. So I was able to really start just, and you're much more creative. You'd be surprised how creative you can be when you don't have the other stresses of getting things done. And so, and during those years, yes, part of my conference room was a daycare for my kids. So, because I had another child in the meantime. So, um, but it was great because there was enough separation in the space. And yet it was good to introduce them to architecture very early, though neither wanted to get into it, but it was here for them. And they were on their computers, they were drawing, they were just having a good time. And so it worked out. It worked out.
I see. So you said you got two good tenants, but was that happenstance or did you have to go through a few bad ones? And if not, what was the strategy you used to be able to identify good tenants for your building?
Well, for the type of building I have, it is strictly an office building. It's meant limited plumbing, so it wasn't like I could put, a hair salon or a barbershop and things like that in. So that kind of directed where I would be looking at for tenants. I put out just a little sign on the, again, the advantage of being on at a good location because it had a lot of visibility with people driving up and down the street. But I was on a board at that time, and it was Coventry Youth Center. I was doing volunteer work there. And the executive director, she heard about my building. And she said, my husband, he's a psychiatrist. You really do need space. And I said, I think I have just what you need. And so that just fell in my hand. And then I was out at a conference or something, and that's when I ran into the insurance company. And he said, I just need a little space. I need something to, have a conference meeting every now and then and a place to just crunch numbers and do stuff. So it worked out perfectly for him. So I did not actually physically put out any ads. I did not aggressively do anything that way. And I have yet to do that. Again, because of the location, I put my little sign out and I get quite a few callers on it. I keep saying I was going to use the city of Cleveland Heights because they do have a commercial real estate part of their the magazine that Heights I forget the name of the magazine, but the city had a magazine as well. Um, and they have listing properties. I don't think I've ever listed there, but there are ways to do it. And again, depending on anybody's situation where you're located, you kind of try to you gravitate to what seems to be working the best for your neighbors. And you do talk, merchants, we do talk with each other. We do find out what are issues in the neighborhood and what are things that we have to track. And so you share a lot of ideas.
Awesome. So then my question is kind of twofold. The first one is, now that you've gotten these two tenants in, oh my God, yes, right? You're getting some surplus, you're getting some money, it becomes play in your practice. But they also said they wanted an office space. So did you have to build it for them? Did you have to hire someone, or was it already an office and they kind of paid for their own kind of upgrades?
Um, I had to subdivide, so I had to pay contractor to lay out a subdivision way in which they could access from the back side for one tenant, from the front side for the other tenant. Um, the space that I had originally when I purchased it, it was a um, marketing management company, and so market research survey company. So they actually had rooms downstairs with one-way glass so that they could observe these various research that they were doing on product research. So there were some minor things I had to do. I think the glass is still in the wall. I just walled over it. And the fortunate part was, again, like I said, by it being an office, I didn't have to right away try and build into it any plumbing. I the flooring was decent enough. I think I did put some new carpeting down, and I had to paint out the walls. You always give a new tenant gets fresh paint, period. So, and you let them pick what color. But beyond that, any window treatment, any special flooring. I know the psychiatrist, he set up a separate room, so he wanted to have it peaceful. So they did their own window treatment and their own finishes of the space. Also, they insulated it because they wanted the privacy aspect of it. So uh, to that degree, the tenant did build back, equity into my property by putting in their own things that they wanted, um, and it was at their cost. So it worked out.
Awesome. So it sounds like this business model is amazing. And however, has there been any major obstacles with running your business through this model throughout the years? And if so, can you share with us what are those obstacles?
Well, when the balloon payment came, that was a surprise because one thing about commercial real estate, it's short-term loan. So it was a 15-year with a 10-year balloon. So um, after 10 years, I did have to eventually refinance, get the balloon money to pay that off, and then I paid off the new loan. So um, I was and I wasn't really ready for it, but when it happened, I said, okay, I'll bite the bullet and do what I have to do. So um, that was a payment I wasn't quite ready because it was much larger than monthly notes. So I was keeping up with the notes without any problem. But when you have to do a balloon payment for 5 years, that's tricky. Um, in the interim, in that first 10 years, yes, I did have some turnover of tenancy. Um, since then, because again, I bought this building back in 1988. So, what is this, 2024? So that's 36 years in this building. So over 36 years, a lot. I've seen a lot of tenants and some good, some bad. The fortunate part is literally after 15 years, the building was paid off. And so that's the other caveat that a lot of people don't realize with commercial real estate. when you can pay something off quickly, then everything after that is pure profit, other than your maintenance and your real estate taxes. Um, I did want to try to leverage and purchase other properties. The the downside was I never was able to get a team together. It takes more than one person, and especially I'm trying to run a practice. I'm also trying, as you say, being a father. I enjoy my kids, and one of the things a lot of my clients used to tell me is, they wish they could take the time off like I did to go to their track meets or watch a basketball game, and those are times with your kids that you can't get back. Once they grow up, it's over. So um, I did a lot of sacrificing at that point. I had an old beater car. So I was no flash in the pan. I was no flash. I just kept my nose to the grindstone and did what I had to do. And but I made sure that they didn't suffer through anything. So
No, that's great. That's great. Okay. So, what are some things you learned about yourself as a business owner?
um as a business owner, the the one key factor for me, and especially in architecture, is I had to become a real good listener. And that I learned was more than just for business, it's for life. Um, if you get married, you gotta be a good listener, because your spouse is saying a lot of things, in code, and you don't realize that, you know. So when I entertain clients and talk to people, um, I just sit back and kind of try and take it all in, because ultimately I'm going to have to morph myself over into being that client. If it's medical, I gotta understand what is it that they see in the medical practice that they have to have and feel. Um, if it's retail, what are the things that you encounter with the cash flow, security, different things that happen, that each project is different and unique into itself. So because of that, when you listen, you find out you learn a lot. I learned so much from my clients, and they appreciate knowing and getting a sense that they're actively participating in their project, and it makes for such a good relationship, a much better relationship, let me put it that way, than trying to dictate what I had in mind and what I want to design for you. And I pull all that back from the conversation and really try and make it a you and we, and this is how we're going to resolve. This is how we're going to creatively come up with something. The second thing that I realized is you know, I actually went through a rites of passage, and part of that is trying to understand what is your purpose and who are you here, who are you, and why are you here. And when I analyzed that purpose, that's when I realized that I'm a puzzle solver. I never see obstacles too great. I just see solutions, and that's how my mind has always worked. People bring something to me, I'm like, yeah, we can do it. The toughest part is to do it at their budget. Yeah, usually those two are just totally out of sync. But you find a happy medium. But yeah, those would be the two things. A good listening and I can get what I just said. But anyway, that.
Yes, you said just knowing your purpose,
Yeah,
right? And that you're a puzzle or problem solver.
right. But
Um,
primarily your purpose, because everybody's purpose is different. Yeah.
right. What are some things you've learned about entrepreneurship that maybe you didn't know, but you know today?
Um, Entrepreneurship, really, you have to take off the gloves and be ready to dive in the deep end. Uh, you're a risk taker. Bottom line, You have to be prepared to lose it all. You have to be willing to um, do what's necessary with confidence. I did a lot of extra stuff. That's why I went to business school. And because I wanted to be able to practice with confidence. I wanted to know where my money is coming from and where it's going. I didn't want to have to rely on the accountants or somebody I hired. Um, and so uh, once you realize that you feel you have everything you need to protect you, to uh, work in your favor, that's when you're willing to take a few risks. And but you try and make them calculated. You try and make them calculated so that um, even if worst case scenario, you'll still be able to land on your feet and survive it. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And if you have that mindset, you can be very aggressive. You can really think big. You can really enjoy the process. As they say, enjoy the ride. It has a lot of ups and downs, but ultimately you will come out on the other side. And I do say when you come out on the other side, you'll be a better person for it. Yeah. Because you do, there's a lot to be learned from your mistakes.
Absolutely. So I only have one more question because I do want to leave time for people to be able to ask some questions based off our discussion. But I do want to insert um, an additional question. So, would you say that your educational experience in getting your MBA helped to prepare you to become a business owner, and it equipped you with the knowledge where the fear factor didn't hinder you from moving forward because there wasn't a lot of unknowns because you were able to I guess create that calculated risk, right? You know the profit and loss, you know how to run numbers, you know what you need to come in and versus going out. Would you say like that background of having that MBA really helped you to get over that fear factor of being an entrepreneur?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Um, that's why when I started, like I said, I was flipping, and in order to flip, you really have to know some numbers and be able to recognize that okay, I can buy it low at this price, put just this amount in, and then come out on the other side of the line. So,
Okay.
um, and it really started in Chicago. Uh, one of my other classmates, he and I, we put a lot of money there because we were working. We worked for like 3 years, and when he was at Perkins Wheel, so I was at Skim Owens and Merrill, and so we were putting away a little bit of money. Um, but Chicago was going through this buyout of apartments and going condo crazy at that time. And condos were, you could buy, and you could buy fairly at a fairly expensive rate, but you could resell it without doing anything because it just turned into um, condo versus an apartment building. And you could sell it 3 times the price of what you bought it for. So that was our first goal. And then when I graduated, well, the year before I graduated, I got ripped off in my apartment. I said, I got to get out of Chicago. So, you know, that kind of blew up in my face because I would have had to stay in Chicago and work with him and do that. But I did learn a lot from different models, different processes of buying and selling properties, real estate. And so, yes, uh, you see a lot of the upside. You also recognize the downside, and you have to be prepared for it. So, yes, it made a major impact in, my schooling, my education. Um, and one of the other things is when I was at Skidmore, what I learned is the school I went to had practitioners as teachers and professors. So they would bring you along if they liked your passport, they would hire you into their office. That's how I got into school. And so they start sharing a lot about the business. And as a student, you see the full aspect of the company. And I took advantage of that because once you come out as an employee, in large companies, you get pigeonholed oftentimes, and you don't see the full breadth of the business. As a student, their whole goal is to let's show them everything. So I was in the model making shop. I was in the studios. I was in the field under construction. You saw all aspects that otherwise you really wouldn't have seen once you come out of school. So that was a great learning tool for me. It gave me a good knowledge of things to be expecting once I did start my own practice.
Awesome. Okay. Forgive me for asking that extra question. This is the last question, really. What
Okay.
advice would you give to someone who wants to be a design entrepreneur?
I thought about that, but I did read that one last. I say dream big, just dream big, but humble yourself enough to don't forget nor respect the small. Oftentimes it's the small that's going to get you over the hump. It's the small that's going to, pay that next bill. So you don't want to become too high and mighty, arrogant. You get a big project and, oh, that's too small for me. No, those small projects, they have value. And everybody is a person and they deserve respect. Their money, they work just as hard for them and put into that project as anybody else. So I always say dream big, but respect the small.
I love that. And with that, that is my last question. So, if there are any questions that you all would like to ask Calvin about real estate development or any of the information he shared, feel free to drop it in the chat or raise your hand and we can be able to recognize you. Um, and please ask as many questions as you can. Keep in mind, this is recorded, so we want to be able to send this out to all of the NOMA chapters to be able to share this message of a successful business model. Do we have any questions?
And if we don't have any questions, I do give a shout out to Bob and Terry and Althea and Daryl. I appreciate seeing you all.
Yes. Got a thumbs up there. Okay.
Well,
It's great to see you too, Calvin. It's been a long time. I'm glad to see you're thriving.
oh, thank you, thank you. Hey, yeah, I see her face.
I know I do these all the time, and it's hard to talk to just the blank. So I appreciate, kind of just how lively this conversation was. It's a nice way to end the afternoon.
Well, you know what? I have to laugh. Don, should I show him my background that I was gonna first?
Oh, Calvin.
Oh, I have to. I have
Okay,
to.
go ahead. Oh, yes. No, no. Yeah, you're right. There was this background he wanted to have during the meeting.
Yeah. Just hey, the waves washing in. I said, no, I have to be a little more serious, but
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's where your mind is, even though you're physically not there. Yeah.
exactly. Hey, Althea.
Alethea, but hello,
Alethea,
how are
I'm
you?
sorry. I have done that I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. You're not the first one and you won't be the last.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Alethea. Alethea is actually the president of NOMA Cleveland chapter. And they're in partnership with us on this series. And so thank you so much for joining us, Alethea. I did have another question, Calvin. So have your tenants changed over time? So, you said in the beginning you had a psychiatrist and you had an insurance agent. Who are your tenants now?
Well, over time, this is like 20 years in, maybe 15, 20 years in, I realized that, I really do recognize when I've been blessed And so I decided to use the space as incubator space at one point in time, and it was kind of down. And meaning that I would let people start in here and give them 3 months free rent and just say, get your feet wet, start practicing. A lot of times people just need a business address, a higher profile to start a business. So I started incubating businesses. And then I was playing basketball, and one of the basketball players, he had been incarcerated, so it was tough getting work. But I noticed his tattoos. And I said, "Who's doing your tattoos?" He said, "That's me." He said, "That's my business." I said, "Well, where are you doing?" In my dining room. And so I said, "Could you use the space?" He said, "Heck yeah." So I got him started, and he had a good 5-year run here. So sometimes you have to also look at, it's not always after 15 years, the building was paid off. So it really wasn't about trying to satisfy with a lot of money. I didn't have the heavy debt that I had initially coming out the day.
Right.
So it became something where what could my give back be to the community, to the city, and other people in general? So I started using the building in that way.
Well, Calvin, if your storefront becomes vacant again, I can think of a community development corporation office in Cleveland Heights that's looking for space. You may know that one.
I just might know who that is.
It might be Future Heights.
I have to laugh. Bob and I were on a board together at Future Heights, so
Yeah.
But and Bob was, he's a retired City of Cleveland Heights planning director. City of Cleveland, City of Cleveland.
Yeah.
I did it with City of Cleveland planning.
Right. I was just a Cleveland Heights wannabe, but I was in Cleveland. Yeah.
But he was Cleveland. He was the planning director.
Yeah.
But no, Bob, I just signed a lease agreement for home health care. So
That's good. As you know,
unless it falls through, then I'll keep
as
you.
some of you know, the Cleveland Heights University Heights Library that owns the former Coventry Elementary School has told all the tenants that on January 31st of next year, they're all out on the street. And so the tenants are scrambling a bit to find relocation spaces. We'll probably be able to do it, although half the building is devoted to artists from the Artful or organization or with them. They're going to have a hell of a time because they're just too big. But we'll see.
Well, they can use some angels out there for them. So
Yeah.
some of these real estate angels will come through.
And maybe we'll be lucky. Okay, well, thanks, Calvin.
Maybe servants.
It's possible. There's some vacant space there. Now, we wouldn't want them to take the Walmart and the Regal Cinemas building because I'm hoping those get torn down for a development. But you're right, there's other spaces there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again, Calvin, for an amazing dialogue to learn more about your entrepreneurship journey, about your successful business model. And for more information about Calvin and his work, do you want to either tell us your email address, but also drop it in the chat?
Sure. I'll put it in the chat as I'm talking. Let me see if I can pull up the chat. Email address is csa101@att.net. And the phone number is area code 216-321-9953. So.
Awesome. Yes. And shameless plug. So my background talks about the Fireside chat, but the Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative is turning 25 this year. We have Terry Schwartz on the call, who has been the director for 22 years. Terry?
Wow.
Yes. She knows
Around that. Yeah.
she knows where all the bones are buried. And we are actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this Thursday, in addition to an exhibit called Party Wall Common. It starts on October 24th. It goes through November 25th. And it's featuring the work of Petra Kemp, who is an architect and urban designer. So we encourage you to check it out this Thursday, or if not, before November 25th. Our next design entrepreneurship chat will be on Monday, October 28th, in which we will be interviewing Dan Bickerstaff, the owner of Ubiquitous Design, where he will be talking about owning a boutique firm. So thank you all for attending, and I hope to see you all at the next chat on Monday. Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all. Hit the beach.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate it all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.